Hello, and welcome to my presentation on communicating across cultures. Specifically, I titled my presentation Listening to the Air because it is a phrase that refers to reading body language and using your intuition rather than actual words when communicating. The big idea for my presentation is cultural awareness and cultural competency. Especially in the United States, it's becoming more and more diverse, and everyday interactions are happening with people from different cultures that we're not as familiar with. So it's really important to understand where other people are coming from, their background, their style of communication, how you can effectively communicate back. So first I want to talk about a low context style of communication. This is when people assume a low level of shared context between them when speaking. So what does this mean? Actually, it means that the two people talking assume that there is little implicit knowledge between them. They have a few shared reference points, only a few, if any, shared experiences. To be an effective communicator in this type of culture, the speaker has to be simple, clear, and explicit. They have to be very direct and provide all of the background knowledge, all of the details, really spell out the idea for the listener. The reason being is because the accountability for this message being accurately transmitted is placed solely on the speaker. So if the listener doesn't understand it, it's not actually their fault, it's looked at as the speaker's fault. And here is an example of how presentations are done in this type of culture. It's three main steps that the presenter will follow. The first is that they will tell the audience what they're going to explain to them, what they're going to teach them about. Then they will present their main idea. And lastly, they'll wrap it up by telling the audience again what they've just showed them. So just another example of how things are very, very direct. And the lowest context culture in the world happens to be the US, with Canada, Australia, Netherlands, Germany, and the UK following close behind. A high context style of communication depends on unconscious assumptions between the two people. And here many messages are conveyed implicitly. So when the low context, the responsibility was placed only on the speaker for making sure that the message was understood, and now it's actually shared by both the speaker and the listener. So the listener has more of a job here, and they have to read between the lines. Both people are assuming that they have these common reference points and common knowledge, and they don't have to be very explicit. And sometimes if they're too explicit, it could be seen as rude or inappropriate. The highest context style is seen in Japan. Other cultures where it exists is India, China, Africa, Latin America, and other Latin European cultures. I included 2 YouTube videos down here to help you further understand this. The first one is a Japanese woman explaining what reading the air means to her in her own words. And the second YouTube video is a skit between 2 college students from different backgrounds when they ran into a problem communicating. So we're going to shift into how language can affect different cultures, whether it's a high context or low context, because in high context, many words can be interpreted multiple ways. So for instance, this Japanese word ashi can mean leg or foot, depending on the context. This word kal in Hindi can mean tomorrow and yesterday. So that would be very different to, for instance, an English speaker who tomorrow and yesterday mean completely different things and could never be the same word to us. But, here in this different culture, you have to really read the whole sentence to hear, to understand, and it's based on how and when these words are used. Next, I wanted to discuss business interactions and how they differ among high context versus low context cultures. So in high context cultures, business interactions move a lot slower. It takes time to build up personal relationships and trust, which is necessary. And there's a lot of face-to-face interaction with clients. Don't want to feel rushed. They want to feel comfortable. Whereas in low context cultures, things move a lot faster. Decisions are made a lot faster, and they're based off of facts rather than intuition on how the people feel or relationships. They're very straightforward. Everything is very concise and literal. Contracts are extremely important and taken very literally, and people follow very strict rules and standards. So it's important to understand this, because if you are in a business interaction with someone from a different culture and they're responding negatively, it could be because you're rushing them, or they're not comfortable with you. So it's important to understand how they might be feeling. So whenever I learn new information, I like to look back and think, why is this? So the reason why these two styles have emerged is from a lot to do with history. If you take Japan, for example, Japan is an island society. So for thousands and thousands of years, it has had the same people existing there, and they have this long shared history together, passed on through generations and generations of children, are these networks of connections. It's a very relationship-oriented society. So for all of those reasons, the people in that society have become very good at reading the air and share a lot together. In contrast, we have the low context of the U.S., and the U.S. has only had a few hundreds of years of shared history. And also, this history was shaped by immigrants that came from different places, different countries, and each one of those had a different history and a different language and background. So it really, really was out of a necessity that this clear, direct style of communicating came about. And lastly, I just want to bring up some issues that can arise. So, how might a person from a low context culture perceive a high context communicator? So they might think the person's being secretive, that they might think that they don't know how to communicate effectively. And if they don't say what they actually mean, they might assume that they're lying. And also, how might a person from a high context view a low context communicator? Well, they might think they are being inappropriate while they're stating the obvious or being very repetitive. They might find that they think they're condescending or patronizing. So it's really, the take-home message here is it's important to research and understand the different backgrounds of people that you're going to be interacting with every day, so that you know why they're acting the way they do, and also so that you can respond to them in an appropriate manner. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.